In today's video, I wanted to share with you some of the meals that we made this week. They were budget friendly, really delicious, and super simple to make. We're gonna start with our meatballs for the meatballs and potatoes stew. To about a pound of ground beef, I'm adding rice flour, about half a cup. This is something that our family uses a lot with ground beef because it tenderizes it without having to use breadcrumbs. It's also a gluten-free option. To it, I added pulverized onion because I don't like the texture of onion, but I love the flavor. You can go ahead and add regularly chopped onion, but this is what I usually use for cooking. I also added the seasonings of salt, pepper, and garlic powder, and now I'm just gonna mix it all together until it is all mixed well. And while I'm mixing up the ground beef, let me introduce myself in case this is the very first time that you have stumbled upon my channel. My name is Gina Zachariah. I'm known as the Saving Wiz, and I help you save money on everyday things, including your groceries. I also show you how to budget well, how to live well, and how to free up more money so you can do more of the things you love. So make sure you subscribe if these are things that interest you. Now that I've mixed up the ground beef, I'm gonna go ahead and form my meatballs. I personally like to bake them because it's less active cooking for me, and it's something that I can just throw in the oven and forget about for 15-20 minutes, but you can air fry them or just fry them in a skillet. However you choose to prepare them, they'll come out delicious. This is what they look like right out of the oven. I had them in there for about 15 to 20 minutes at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And I like to put them on a paper towel just to drain off the excess oil. This is just the natural fat that gets rendered off of the ground beef. Next, I'm peeling about 3 to 4 potatoes, and I'm going to dice them into smaller pieces so that I can start cooking them into the stew. And before I start dicing them, I'm gonna go ahead and rinse them off because I was told that if you rinse them off before you start dicing them, you actually save your knife from getting too dull too fast. I don't know if it's true, but I thought I would try it because it doesn't hurt. Into a big heavy pot, I'm adding a little bit of olive oil and I'm adding some frozen onion. This is about half a cup of frozen onion, and it thaws out super quick as you're cooking it. It takes about a minute or two at the most. Next, I'm going to add a cube of garlic, and if you've been with me for a while, you know that I mince my garlic and chop my onion all at once, and then I put it in the freezer. For the garlic especially, what I do is put it in a baggie and then flatten it out and score it with the back of a butter knife so that I have squares that I could just break off straight from the freezer and start cooking with. Then I added a 10-ounce can of tomato puree or tomato sauce with my seasonings of salt, pepper, and garlic powder. Once it starts to bubble, I'm gonna go ahead and cover it and let it simmer on low heat for about 7 minutes. I know, 7 minutes seems super precise, but my stovetop gets really hot, so anywhere between 7 to 10 minutes or until it gets a little thicker. Then I thin it out with 2 cans of water, and I put in my potatoes so that they can simmer because the potatoes are going to make the sauce a little bit thicker too. I mix, and then I'm gonna put it on high so that the potatoes can actually start to boil and cook. And I'm not gonna cover it all the way. I want there to be a little bit of space so that there could be some evaporation of the liquids. Then I'm putting back all of the meatballs, and I'm gonna let everything simmer together. I only put the meatballs back in when the potatoes are almost completely cooked. I let it simmer for another maybe 5 minutes or so, and then it's ready to go. When it looks like this and it's a little bit thicker and everything has kind of married together, it's ready to go. We serve it over rice. This is one of my family's favorite dishes. My kids actually ask for this all the time. It's comforting, it tastes so good, and it's not hard to make. Plus, it's budget friendly. Oh, and it's perfect for leftovers. So if you make more of it, you can have it for several days, or you can even freeze it. Moving on to the next dish, we made a tofu fried rice. I love cutting tofu. I don't know if I'm the only one that likes this, but there's something about cutting tofu that just feels so fun. But anyway, you're just gonna cut the tofu into cubes. You can make them small or large. I like to make them smaller so they're more bite-sized, and that way they actually have more surface area to cook and they get a little bit browner because I really like that kind of texture. I put a little oil in my pan and let it get brown on most of the sides so that the texture changes a little bit. See how it turns a little bit golden brown? Just leave it. The first time that I made this, I was super impatient and it was taking a while, and it didn't come out as good because I didn't give it a chance to actually get to that color. Once I take out the tofu, I add an onion with the same amount of oil that was already in the pan. I really love one-pot dishes because it makes things simple and I have less cleanup later. That little square yellow thing, that's frozen garlic. I like to add garlic after I've added the onion so that it doesn't burn. And if you're new here and you don't know why I'm using frozen onion and frozen garlic, I like to prep all of my veggies and herbs ahead of time so that when I'm making a meal, everything is ready when I am. And soon I'll have some videos where I show you exactly how I chop my onion, my garlic, shred my cheese, do all of the things, and how I freeze it so that they can last long. Now, normally we add in frozen carrots and peas. I added frozen peas, didn't have frozen carrots, so I thought I would just add some frozen veggies. It just so happens that these veggies were really big and I didn't realize that until I dumped it into the pan. So I lowered the heat and tried as best as I could to make them smaller as they were cooking. Not the best suggestion, but it worked. And now I'm putting in my day-old rice. Here's a suggestion that I wish I had done because this was a really hard part. It was not really kind of getting out of the clumps. So I wish I had just taken like a plastic glove in the bowl and just squeezed it a little to kind of get out all of those big chunks first before I put it in the pan. So if you can do that first, that would be much better. It was a little bit hard to get all those big clumps away, and it took a long time. Off camera, I had to do it several times. I ended up using this wooden spoon because it's a little bit easier with it, but I felt like I was squishing all the other ingredients, which is not the greatest thing. So if you could do that ahead of time, it would be better. Now I used some soy sauce and some honey. About a 1/4 cup of soy sauce and about a 1/4 cup of honey is what I used. Feel free to play with it to see what works best for your seasonings and taste. It came out pretty good, and I left the vegetables just a little crunchy. Up next, we're making red lentil soup. All I did was just rinse and drain the red lentils. This is about a cup, a big cup of red lentils, so maybe 2 cups. And then I added an onion that I chopped, a few whole garlic cloves, some carrots. I have baby carrots on hand, so that's what I used. And then I covered it all with water. You don't have to do much to this, which is why I like it. Just add a little bit of salt, a little bit of cumin, stir it up, and let it simmer. That's all you're gonna do. You're gonna let everything soften up, and then I'll show you what you do next. For the chips, for the pita chips, all you're gonna do is just either cut it by hand, or I like the scissors, it just makes it easier. And literally you don't even need oil. You just bake them in the oven at like 350 or 400 degrees. They dry out, get crispy, get golden brown, and they come out perfect. You don't have to add anything. You can add seasoning if you want, but I like them plain because the red lentil soup already has a lot of flavor. Remember, even though we just added salt and cumin, there's garlic and there's onion and there's the flavor of the red lentils. So you have a lot of flavor in all of that. While the pita chips are baking, I'm also going to just take a little bit of vermicelli. This is about half a cup of vermicelli, which is very short pasta. I'm just gonna brown it up because this is a really good adage to the red lentil soup as well. You don't have to do this part. There's a lot of times when I want it to be a little healthier, and so I don't add this in, but this helps it thicken up even more, and it just gives it a really cool texture. The pita chips are all ready and nice and toasty now, and the soup looks like it's almost ready. The onions look like they're cooked, and I always want to double check by making sure that the carrot is fork tender. If it is, then it's ready to blend. Now I have a really old school blender, but if you have a stick blender or you have a different type of blender that can do this, perfect. I don't actually mind using this blender. I barely use it, so it's mostly used for this soup, and it works out perfectly. So you just add all of it in there. Make sure that you make it as smooth as possible. You don't want any chunks in there. It's not supposed to be rustic. It's supposed to be a very smooth consistency. But of course, it's your kitchen, so you can make it any way you like. Once it's all blended out, you're gonna put it back in the same pot. And then you're gonna let it simmer for maybe another 5 minutes or so. You can add the vermicelli. It needs to cook inside of the soup, okay? So you're gonna brown it, but then it needs to cook inside of the soup so it can actually soften and thicken up the soup. If for some reason your soup gets too thick, just add some broth or some water to it and let it get to the consistency that you want it. You can also add broth from the very beginning. I personally don't. I like the way it tastes this way, but you can absolutely add broth, you can add chicken stock, you can add bouillon, you can add whatever you want. Honestly, most of the recipes that I'll show you, you can make it however you want with whatever seasonings you like too. The last step is I'm caramelizing some onions. So I put some oil and I've chopped up my onion really, really fine. And once you caramelize it, that's gonna be like the topping, the garnish. This is one of our favorite dishes during the fall and winter because it really does make you warm from the inside out. Like you'll actually get hot after you eat this soup. And it's very hearty and comforting and pretty healthy and pretty cheap when it comes to budget-friendly meals. So I'm garnishing with the onions and adding the pita chips. And that's it. Dinner is ready. This is another one-pot dish that's super simple to make because it's literally 2 ingredients, onions and meat. You can make any side dish that you like next to it, rice, pasta. We usually make spaghetti next to it or some type of pasta with tomato sauce, but this part of the dish is super simple. All you're gonna do is take stew meat, which is a very affordable cut of meat, and cut it into very small bite-sized cubes. This same dish also happens to be the base for the peas, meat, and rice dish that I usually make, and I've made it on TikTok and Instagram a few times, but I'll show that to you in another video, but this is the exact same base. And I always get questions about these knives that I use. These are the Cuisinart knives. I got them personally from Macy's. They came in a set. They're not the greatest from what I hear from chefs, but they work for the purpose of a regular mom who just needs to have a good knife that can be sharpened easily. And I sharpen on the back of a ceramic cup and it works perfectly. I got them for less than $20 and there were 5 knives in the set. And I think they're on Amazon, so I'll try to link them because I don't know that they're at Macy's anymore. But I will link them for you in case you're interested in looking at them. Into a very hot pan, I added a little bit of clarified butter, which has a higher smoking point, and my chopped onions, which I've thawed out. And I'm just gonna let it saute for maybe a minute or two, and then I'm gonna drop in my meat. And to this dish, I add plenty of salt and a little bit of pepper. Now you can add any other seasonings you like, but traditionally it's salt, pepper, and allspice that you would add to this dish, or maybe 7-spice. I don't know, my mom used to add different things. I'm kind of a purist when it comes to cooking, and I just like to add salt and pepper so I can actually taste the ingredients, but feel free to add whatever you want into this. You want to get it to a little bit golden brown, and then once you get it to that place, we're going to add some water and bring down the temperature to like medium low, cover it and let it simmer for about 15 to 20 minutes, and every 5 minutes you're just stirring to make sure there's enough water and that nothing is burning on the bottom. We're almost there. You see how the meat has gotten a little bit more brown. It looks much more tender, but the juices are a little bit still liquidy. So we're gonna let it simmer for another 5 minutes or so. Not the most fanciest or prettiest dish, but it does have a lot of flavor. And that's it for today. Tell me in the comments, which of these meals are you going to make?